welcome back to Basics. My name is Jane, Miss Janie here on YouTube, and I am your Saturday vlogger. And today we conclude the topic of for Body Week, which is body size. The post-op body size effect. The first question is, do people treat you differently post-op than they did pre-op? For the most part, I think in the beginning, yes. In the beginning, my family was very supportive here. The ones that live here locally, cheering me on. In the beginning, cheering me on. And then when I got to closer to go, of course, then it was like, oh no, you're starting to look sick. And I remember one day my brother coming and telling me to stop. He was like, stop it, you're starting to look really sick. But because I'd already heard everybody go through it, I didn't believe it, and I didn't pay attention to that because I was riding the wave of success, especially since it was so quick. I got to a normal BMI in 10 months, so it was just like, I felt like I was there. Suddenly I was just there. I was treated very differently by my in-laws, though, when we went to Mexico. I remember when we went and they didn't know who I was. They thought my husband had shown up with somebody else, and so they treated me very coldly at first. They didn't even look at me. They just saw this small person get out of the truck, and they didn't even behave very kindly to my husband. And so it wasn't until I had to look at my brother-in-laws and say, hey, it's me. Then they're like, oh, then they were excited for me. But at first they were like, who are you? They were not very nice. So that's actually kind of gratifying to know that I have that loyalty. But my sister-in-laws, we were very close, and I feel like I lost them for a while there. They would do a stare at me. I mean, literally, like I was some kind of bug. They couldn't help themselves, and I would tell my husband, they're making me feel uncomfortable. They just made me feel super uncomfortable, and I ended up, for a few years, every time we went, I spent most of the time in my room reading, because they were no longer welcoming, and part of it's on them and part of it's on me, because I didn't know how to be myself anymore around them. I didn't know how to break the ice. I had a friend who told me later, you should have just sat on their laps and said, hey, it's still me, But at the time, attention like that was new to me, and it's attention. I'm not an attention seeker, not per se, you know what I mean? Obviously, I like some attention like everybody else does. Otherwise, we wouldn't be making videos if we didn't like attention, at some level. So, I'm real with myself. I do, I was okay with some attention, but that kind of attention where they're scrutinizing you so much, where they're just like, I mean, literally, I would walk into the room and they would just stop and freeze and stare. And not in a very uncomfortable way. And then they stopped sharing with me. Like, they stopped talking to me like a person that they confided in. They didn't recognize me anymore. They didn't. And now, I'm going to be 6 years out in a month or so. And now, it's just now in the last year that finally things have warmed up for us. But it's been a long road. I don't know what they thought, and maybe one of these days I'll ask them about it. But we lost each other for a while. Attention from men. I feel like that was an interesting journey in itself to trying to deal with that, because now that's something I didn't welcome. I've never liked that meat market feeling. Um, I've never liked that. I uh, The good thing is that you know, I I don't notice it anymore. Sally was talking about how you don't get the compliments and stuff like that. Um, I do, and I'm just not that self-aware anymore. You know what I mean? Like I've just kind of gotten used to it, and every now and then somebody's aggressive in their attention and the way they post their attention, and uh, I think because I'm rarely by myself anymore. Before I was always by myself, even though I could be with a group of friends, I was by myself. I wasn't, with my partner. And so it just, um, and I was in places where that kind of attention is almost like a part of the scene, like if I was at a club listening to my friend's band play, you know, in clubs, that's kind of the scene. So I don't find myself in those places anymore. So I don't really feel that. But yeah, every now and then I still get the random weirdo at the grocery store, trying to whisper things in my ears. But I've just learned to not be so self-aware, I guess. I just feel like everybody's living their own life. So I don't really I think if I thought about it and was looking for it, I'd find it, but I'm not looking for it. So, I made peace with that, which is something that I like. And I've created boundaries. I have boundaries now that I didn't have before, because I know now uh, the price of not having boundaries. Um, I've prioritized, my relationship with my spouse comes first, and and finding that, making that priority, a lot of that other stuff has fallen away. I will say that the weight loss surgery community, as loving and as wonderful as everybody is, there, that's where I find a lot of difference. Like when we are losing, we're in the losing maintenance, a lot of support, a lot of encouragement. Once you hit maintenance, you kind of are thrown into a desert land, or at least you used to be. It might be different now for the new crew of people, but once you get into maintenance, people aren't that interested in supporting you and keeping your weight down, um, because most people are still losing. I think that's why we always got graduated off of YouTube, and went to Facebook. Maintenance life for me, most of it has been on Facebook. You know, that's uh, because we don't have numbers to report. When you're in maintenance, you don't do that. It's not that interesting. Um, and if you regain, you're either uh, shunned, as some kind of failure, or I don't know. I just feel like even that part of it, I'm still processing. I know I just went to Tampa, and it was weird to get the up and down looks. I mean, you expect it, but and you see it in people's faces. That they either think that you're not where they think you should be. Um, but I've said it for several years now. You know, at the Yeah, I could go lower. Well, I don't know if I could go lower now. I'm fighting certain physical things, but um, yeah, I'll declare it. I could probably go, get smaller again, to my low, but I wasn't happy there, and I didn't like the way I looked, and I feel like this is my life, and I have to like the way I look before I care about what other people think about how I look. I mean, I've just found a lot of freedom uh, from that. How has it made me think about other people? I don't think I've changed in the way how I think of other people. Um, I'm not a very good observer of people when I'm outdoors. That's one thing I will say. I'm not constantly looking at people. I just don't. I never really have, but I really don't now. I just, I don't know. I feel like when I'm out and about, I'm doing what I got to do, and I'm not looking at what people look like. I don't, like I would be like the worst person to ask Nick to be a witness for something, because usually things are happening around me and I have no clue. And you could ask, that's something that you can tell, my husband and my family. I mean, they'll tell you that I have no clue, because I'm not a good observer. Uh, and I think it has to do with criticism. I don't really criticize myself anymore. And because I don't criticize myself, I really don't find the need to criticize others. I'm at peace with myself. And just because I can improve, I don't hate. And I feel free. So a lot of that, it doesn't apply anymore. Does that make me feel like, don't think like I'm like Mother Teresa or anything, because that's not how I intended. I'm just saying, in working towards freeing myself of a lot of baggage that I had, um, I freed myself of all of that stuff. I got out of my fat suit. In my fat suit was criticism and self-hatred, and and that made me think of people in a different way, because when you don't like yourself, it's easy to find what you don't like in others. Um, I've learned to like myself. I mean, I still, there, have thoughts. The ego likes to throw in these thoughts that are not the kindest um, sometimes, but I've learned to ignore those thoughts. They're not me, they're just chatter. And I just know that now that when I look at people, I try more to see how are we connected. I like to think of people when I see them as who they were, imagine them as who they were when they were babies. And I personally love babies, so it makes it very easy to care for people. But it's a process, it's a process for me still. How have I thought about body size? What I think about body size is that what makes me happy may not make somebody else happy. For some people, a certain number on the scale, a certain size is very important. For others, the same things make them very unhappy. Um, I how I think about body size now is that I'm I'm going to take every day and just appreciate that I'm alive and the things that I can do every day, the freedom that I have now that I didn't have, you know, to never forget how important it was for me to be able to tie my shoelaces just as much as it's important for me to, you know, be able to challenge myself in some new way. Um, I I feel like I'm living an evolution, the evolution of Jane, and I'm having fun at it. Anyways, that's all I have to say. It's been too much. I'll talk to you later.